Good evening and welcome to the March InKY reading from the Louisville Literary Arts. Yay, we have a full house tonight. I'm so excited. I'm going over to the chat to see where people are joining us from. I see Indianapolis, Independence, Kentucky, Wichita, Kansas, Colorado, Richmond, Indiana, Liverpool, UK, Arizona, Louisville, Kentucky. Ray's mom says, I'm here in Cincinnati, Ohio. So welcome, everyone. I am Charlize Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Literary Arts. I want to remind everyone we are being recorded tonight, so we are all going to be superstars when it's all said and done. So welcome. I'm clapping because I'm excited tonight to have two awesome, I call them literary artists with us tonight. So I'm going to start with Karen George. Wave to the people, Karen, because you're still on mute, and I'm going to read your bio for everyone. So Karen George is an author of 5 chapbooks, most recently at Ekphrastic Collaborative Chapbook. Is that right? Did I say it right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I said it right. Frame and Mount the Sky in 2017, and 3 poetry collections from Dos Madres Press, Swim Your Way Back, A Map in 1 Year, and Where Wind Tastes Like Pears. That is a mouthful. Her work has appeared in Adirondack Review. Did I say that right? Almost. Well, no, I didn't. Naugatuck River Review, Valparaiso Poetry Review, Indianapolis Review, and Poet Lore. She's received grants from Kentucky Foundation for Women and Kentucky Arts Council. Kentucky Arts Council is our friend, and holds an MFA in writing from Spalding University. After 25 years as a computer programmer and analyst, she retired to write full time. I might need your expertise. She enjoys photography and visiting museums, cemeteries, historic towns, gardens, and bodies of water. And I will put her website link down here in the chat for all of our listeners tonight. Also, before you begin, Miss Karen, I just want everyone to know we appreciate you joining. We have some more people coming in the room, and I will just bring them in as they come. But you can begin now, Miss Karen. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Charlize. And thanks to Louisville Literary Arts and all these reading. And I've been writing for a long time, hobby since I was in grade school, and some in high school, and on through my life. I stopped for 10 years thinking that I just wasn't ever going to get anything published, and why keep messing with this, just get in the real world and wake up, but thankfully I went back to it and have been writing ever since, and I really can't imagine my life without it now. But I'm going to start with some poems from my 3rd full-length collection, Where Wind Tastes Like Pears, which was published last August by Dos Madres Press. And here's the cover. They do some beautiful covers. And just to tell you a little bit about the book, it's poems that are meditations on imagination, memory, wildness, and wonder, how we connect and transform, seen through the landscape of dreams. And this is the first poem in the book, and it's a cento, which means it's composed from lines and phrases in Jane Hirshfield's collection, Given Sugar, Given Salt. In the dream, the ears drink and drink like lapping panthers. Perhaps it is not the outcome, but the listening under the surface, something that whispers only when I am quiet for a long time. Ululations and whinnies, throat clearings, cheeps, alien hums and whistles, scratchings, the first branch tips brush at the window, a mockingbird's song, a dog howling at time, the clink of a soup spoon against soup bowl, the ringing of a stone or violin or empty bucket gives off, the bump of a kind of hope against its lock. Let them linger as almost meaning. the thing already ambered, capable of waiting, turns to words, words like river pebbles, some black, some white, some sigh with pleasure, a sentence repeating itself in my ear, the almost audible valves of my heart. This next poem is a found poem I created from page 1 of Virginia Woolf's novel To the Lighthouse. Night's Lark. Picture a mother who transfixes crystals to the fringe of her child's blue dress to ward off sorrow and frailty. They speak a secret language that sounds like a lark's radiance. The child sits in a hooded wheelbarrow, turned toward tomorrow. They will leave for an expedition of wonder, once a clan of 6 rooks appears to power their course. This book has pretty many found poems in them, and I've really enjoyed writing those. Using for source texts, some of my favorite writers. So this next one is another one created from Virginia Woolf's novel To the Lighthouse. And I just randomly chose page 149 to use the words from. And this wasn't an actual dream I had, but it echoes so many of my dreams where a loved one returns from the dead for a visit. And I really love hearing those dreams, which may sound weird, but they're special for me. Night vapors. You come back from the dead, covered in lilies, cupping light. The kitchen contracts, loosens from the house. Books and doors burst open. Your voice catches me. I wake in a tide of wonder. This next poem, I used the source text of a poem by Bridget Pagine Kelly. And this one is called Quiet Flight. 2 persons on a porch, a limp fan whistles on high. The woman paints a field of purple asters, a body gone soft beneath a tree of golden lamps. The man stares at a book, blind to the black wave pulling her under, the old damage, poison dripping from a broken seal. The low pitch of a crow pollutes the quiet. Cows moo across river. She places water, a shiny ribbon, feathers in a dark scarf plummeting through blue, a red gate, a lime bush, a sign that pledges night and stars ahead. Night prowl. You dream a cave, the air heady as hyacinths. A woman carves a holy bird out of wax beside a man who plays a flute, a last grasp for forgiveness at the edge of its melancholy bleat. But the thick chalk of memory shudders her like the sounds a tight lock makes or when a shovel lands on stone. Besides erasure, the twinned, caged heart houses mercury and teeth. These next 2 poems are actual dreams that I've had. And this first one was written after watching the documentary Wild Madagascar. Dilemmas. Imagine 60 million years ago, the first lemurs floated on matted plants to an island cleaved from a continent. Now they're endangered by logging and the poor who eat them. I dream of lemurs thriving in Kentucky. At dusk, they descend from pine, locust, shagbark hickory, cross the sliding glass threshold I keep open. Line up in clans led by matriarchs. Litter shards of nutshells, pine cones, cricket and beetle legs. They groom with tooth comb and tongue, climb my books, piles of poems, snort, chirp, shriek, purr. Tiny mouse lemurs to tall, ring-tailed and eye. Long middle fingers tapping. I wake, wishing all adaptation that easy. This was a recurring dream that I've had through the years, off and on. In river dreams, I'm always going under. Brakes fail, the bridge unbuckles or climbs higher, and when I reach the summit, no way down but to nosedive toward the shine. No time to eject before impact. Metal collapses in. The crush suck catapults me out into cold, dark plush, heavy on my head. Clouds of sediment churn when I frog kick off the bottom, arms overhead, a bullet. Oh, the rising towards light that tendrils down, my kicks thick as the musk metallic like blood, chest ache of lungs longing. Oh, the breakthrough, nails of my fingers pierce the river skin, scrim that hems air. The dream ends before I thrash my arms, throw my voice across water to a triangle in the inlet, the boat that will turn for me. And this is a found poem again, created from Maggie Smith's poem, Vanishing Point. In a forest, a woman speaks to a downy deer. He swallows yellow flowers from her hand. She tells him twitchy stories, blue stillness, ancient stars, fur, cake, rain, how to smell his way, when to lurk and vanish in the braided dark. This next poem was composed from words in Snow White and Rose Red by Andrew Lang in the Blue Fairy Book. In Sleep's Cape, some nights she's a woman in a house made of logs wedged with mud, seated fireside, piecing a dress of quail wings and air, tender leaves and milk teeth, needle piercing in, out, catches light. Sometimes she becomes a butterfly, folds herself, settles on a branch in warm sun, or she scissors the air open, closed. At night clings to a cave shared with a bear. Her feet perceive root, stream, berry in his musty fur. Or she's a man diving into a body of water. The cold, a blade, seizes, turns him into a bearded angelfish, red with black ribboned fins. He hovers for prey. By a window, a widow muddles moths, ashes, wizened grasshoppers, mutters words pearled with hurt. Spinning a wand, she lands, binds a wish, entangles a hazel-eyed, shuttered lover. Some nights she wakens buttered with wonder. Others, the precipice calls her name, voice laced with longing. I'm going to change course now, and I'm going to read some poems from an almost finished collection that were inspired by paintings of Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida Kahlo, and Emily Carr, who were contemporaries of each other. And I'll start with one by Emily Carr. She was a Canadian painter who lived in British Columbia, and she did a lot of paintings to document the disappearing totem poles of the indigenous peoples that originally inhabited the land. And this poem is titled The Great Eagle Skidegate, and it was that painting was painted in 1929, and it has an epigraph from her book, Growing Pains. Quote, his spiritual conception he buried deep in the woods he was about to crave, end quote. Everything pointed, sharp, towering totem cocooned in a glass sky, shattered into a puzzle of prisms. The fir's barbed crowns, the eagle's beak, wingtips, staccato slap of flying, the shredding talons not visible. Cedar aged a rich bronze and steel blue, as if morphing into sky, petrifying. Large eyes deep set, mouth a wide grimace. From his perch he scans all creation, face in shadow, an intense tilt to his head. Has he spotted prey, ready to lunge and stab? Or does he stare in disgust at what the world's become? And I'll read one more, inspired by another Emily Carr painting, which she did a lot of, she was really trying to embody the wildness and wonder of the British Columbia forest. And this poem is inspired by her 1931 painting titled Gray. Dense layers of dark forest rise like spires, converge. Deep color, the oldest trees at the edges, less intense young ones near the center. Nested one inside the other, branch and foliage in thick tents, flaps open to reveal an illuminated seedling cocooned in a pearly veil. Igneous light divulges a path, a passage out, past the beating heart. And this next poem is titled Georgia O'Keeffe's Pattern of Leaves, and it was painted in 1923. And this poem has two parts. One, they fill the frame, intense, close as a palm raised to your face, deeply veined, collage of layers, background smoke, 3 leaves overlaid one on another. Bottom one only ruffled edges, a gray-green shadow. Middle leaf white as if furred with mold. The top dark maple, the color of Merlot, in places almost black like dried blood. A vertical cut clean through the pulp, zigzag of lightning strike, yellow in the wound, break of sunlight, exquisite, obscene, a plump heart yanked from a body. 2, a torn heart. 3, the slash so clean hints leafcutter ants, voracious hunger that consumes in minutes, flesh-eating driver ants in the Poisonwood Bible. A village runs for the river. 4, is it hard to paint violence, to form that jagged gash, nearly disconnect one half from the other, to scar beauty, inflame it? And this poem is titled after Georgia O'Keeffe's Pelvis III painting, 1944. The bleached pelvis devours the frame, raised to sky, a telescope. The blue blooms through the bone hole, reach calves, birth through. Imagine how its hooves pounded earth in glee, terror. Or is it a soft-shelled robin's egg, just laid, hoarded in a hollow of white sand. Oval balm, form within form, a nesting. 10 years ago, near an old, abandoned stone barn, the skeletal head of a fox, sharp teeth intact and pointed snout. I place fingers in a nasal cavity, an eye socket, where ears once sensed mice stir in a burrow, rabbits rustle grass. Feel inside its jaw for the missing sinewy tongue. An ache thrums my throat, grief for all the absent ones, hum of connection. This poem was inspired by Frida Kahlo's painting titled Henry Ford Hospital, or The Flying Bed, painted in 1932. Frida, not everyone wants to see you unclothed on a hospital bed in the open air, industrial Detroit on the horizon, blood puddling beneath you, clutched in your hand, long umbilical cords attached to floating objects, model of the female reproductive system, a snail, an orchid, your pelvis fractured in a bus accident when you were 18, and the male fetus you miscarried. Miscarried, an odd word, miss, wrongly, to carry wrongly, as if you chose an incorrect way to carry your unborn son. When shown in New York exhibit 6 years later, your painting was titled The Lost Desire. I never desired to have children. People don't want to believe that. I've been told a marriage is invalid unless it results in children. Schooled as a preteen by the faith I was raised in, procreation the only purpose for sex. Even then, I knew bullshit when I heard it. This is a hard poem to write. I wish your son had lived. Frida, 30 years after your death, ecstatic to buy my first book of your art, a male clerk slid repulsed eyes over its cover, mouth squinched up like he'd bit into an extra sour lemon wedge. I never cared for her, he stated, eyes lowered. I pretended not to hear his unwanted opinion. What I wanted was to slap his face, utter a few choice curses. This poem is inspired by Frida Kahlo's painting, The Love Embrace of the Universe, 1949. A triangle of connection, nested babushka dolls, worlds to clasp, sun, moon, music, art, words, dance, forests, lakes, loves, never-ending realms within realms, to layer, seam, embroider our lives, smother pain and fear, hurl us safe in intricate webs. If only we can remember the ways we are embraced, the fervid green of soft moss, violin, harp, and cello's liquid lilt, pierce of lilac and lily of the valley, how water cradles us, silky thick. Our first date, the tenor of your voice as you sang to me, blue notes tickling the plush dark. I'm going to read some poems from another in progress collection of poems about family stories, home, caretaking, aging, and memory. And this is a poem written about a dream I actually had. All night long, I dream of paintings. Massive canvases drift past me, hundreds. Portraits, landscapes, abstracts. I want to purchase 3, but fail to narrow the choices. A woman with violet hair floats in a cobalt sky. Stars land in her palms, Mist lifts from a lake near sunrise. Outward expanding ripples shimmer. Dizzying swirls of triangles, ribbons, teardrops of turquoise, fuchsia, chartreuse, a vibrating spiral. To parchment, I apply pigment, a watercolor of rhombus, trapezoid, ellipse, latticed like a writhing school of fish clustered close. I wake, a knee, hip, shoulder aching, swim back into the sea of color, shape, pattern, texture. My mother appears in her mid-teens, light auburn hair. Seated at an easel, she paints herself playing a piano, rendition of when she auditioned for Dad's band. She dabs silver on the skirt folds of her emerald satin swing dress. Her fingers curve over ivories arrayed on either side, the white open plain of her life. This poem is titled March 16th, 2021. The crocus, first in my yard to bloom, purple with tiny orange kernel, blossom within blossom. Ground saturated from a foot of snow 3 weeks ago. Now magnolia, white feathered with pink stripes, furry gray-green sepal that open from. The way sun filters through slim petals. Spring's early yellows, witch hazel, forsythia, daffodils, meadow buttercups, air fertile, dense with pollen and birdsong, trails, a mudfest. Yesterday, on the first anniversary of my mother's passing, I find 3 socks fallen in the narrow space between washer and stationary tub. 2, mine, lost a year or more. The other, a white anklet, my mother's name, Vivian, printed in permanent black ink when she moved to a nursing home. Bone white, so soft in my palm, a dove. And this is the last poem I'll read. And this poem is about my husband, Lou. He's deceased. I guess I should say that. Rewound. You're rushed to the ER, can't breathe. X-rays reveal your right lung collapsed. Doctors ask if you've had a bad car crash because your left lung looks as if it was crushed a long time ago. Imagine our surprise when you retell the story and realize the Army never divulged your lungs condition. If they had, would you have stopped smoking, lived past 63? 42 years ago, an explosion. You wake from a weeks-long coma in an Army hospital. Learn a landmine catapulted the Jeep into the river. The driver drowned. The dog dragged you to shore by your uniform. I envision you in that open air vehicle, a fellow soldier driving beside you, the unit's adopted dog snug in the back cargo space. You're only 18. The sun, hot on the khaki covering your shoulders, echoes the feral musk of the dog's coat and the muddy scent of the river stretching ahead of you like your life. Thank you very much for being such sweet listeners.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm clapping. You see it? Thank you. Thank you for being so transparent and sharing your work as well. And I think you have a few comments in the chat. Can you see those? And did anyone want to give feedback? I think Sarah Moore Wagner gave you a comment. So before we transition to Ray, I want to go on and let you all know that we are accepting new members all the time into Louisville Literary Arts, and we have a members only event coming up on March the 22nd at 7:00 p.m. You can go to our website and become a member. We have different levels of membership, or if you want to just send a donation to LLA, we'd appreciate that too. We have some exciting things coming up towards the latter part of the year, bigger events, in-person events, because as I was thinking about this being March the 10th of 2022, on March the 13th of 2020, we were all sent to the house, remember? Does everybody remember? We had to, it was just like, bam, everything is shut down. So I'm just grateful for us being able to gather and share in this way. I'm thankful for Zoom. And I'm just thankful for the literary arts community still supporting one another. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Ray Hoffman Jagger. Did I say Jagger right? Okay. I got to get, I'm from Woodford County. I'm very country. So I have to check my accent sometimes. So the next reader for tonight is Ray Hoffman Jagger, whose first book, American Bitch. Now it has to be exciting, definitely with that title. This will be released by Kelsey Books this year. It's coming soon. She'll talk a little bit more about that. Ray holds a BA from Warren Wilson College and an MFA from Wichita State University. In 2016, Ray was named the Voice Poet out of Salina, Kansas. Most recently, Ray has been named one of ISH's 22 Emerging Artist Fellows. Ray has been published in a variety of magazines, The Moth, New York Quarterly, Autofocus, just to name a few. She lives on a big hill in Bellevue, Kentucky, with her living daughter, son in the stars, spouse, and 2 old dogs. I heard you say earlier you were keeping your dog out of the room, or the dog was making noise or something earlier, but you are welcome to share with us. Welcome to our stage.
Thank you. And I pronounce your name Charlize, right? Thank you for having us. Mm-hmm. Hi, folks. This is very weird, not in person. But I'm going to read some poems tonight from my chapbook, One Throne. And many of these poems will also be in my upcoming book, American Bitch, which is kind of an unlikely pairing of book of poems about being pregnant, football, Jewish cultural things. It's a giant pot of a lot of things. And I just want to say my grandma and grandpa are here, and I'm going to say lots of bad words. So just warning you. All right, this first poem is called The End of the World. And I originally wrote a lot of the poems in my upcoming book when Trump was in office, and it felt really relevant then. And unfortunately, this idea of the world ending is still really relevant. So here we are. The end of the world. It begins with a splinter of some kind, a bunch of old men sitting in a circle, deciding which laws to bend first. It sounds like crunching, a wood chipper eating itself. Outside, it always looks like it's going to rain, and that rain is going to burn. If only you could have seen this coming, taken matters into your own hands. You tried, I remember, climbed a secluded mountain to pray, hit your phone with a rock, put crystals all over your body, and when that didn't work, you gave up. I am sorry for all those I have failed. The trees are limp and the old gods are dead. There is no punishment for people unloading guns into one another. No turning back, just turning from. This next poem is called History is Made by the Victors. And I'm sure there are a lot of nice men out there named Victor, but I'm picking on the name. It's about the type of people who do things to hurt everyone for no reason because they're hurting. When the wars have halted and the smoke clears, the last man standing is always some noodle you would never expect to survive a fart. Victor, cowardly, greedy Victor. Every Victor I've ever known has been an ass. Victor eating the last slice of pie. Victor taking $50 from his grandmother's purse. Caligula Victor, spoiling the last episode for everyone on social media. Victor with his hen feather comb over. Victor pressing his grubby thumb into all of the peaches in the produce aisle because he is feeling rotten. Victor buying 12 Bud Lights, not tipping the bartender and hitting on your wife. Victor is conveniently installed at every atrophied corner of history with a smirk. Because luck is the true ruler and Victor has plenty of it. Because justice is only the name of a tween apparel store. Because it's not the remarkably smart or strong ones that make it out alive. Never. Think of all the noteworthy people who fall quietly off the cosmic cliff every year. As my father, whose name is not Victor, always said, you don't win a chapter in the good book by sticking out your neck. You win by grabbing the nearest blunt object and swinging it around. This poem is called First Lesson in Violence, and this is one of the poems in my new book. The other ones were, but a couple of them were found in my chapbook as well. This one is entirely new. And I've always been obsessed with this idea of the Greek and the Romans just being so violent, and why? Like, why were they so violent? So I took this idea of how we have adopted that violence in our American culture from our ancestors. There are occasions when I say, pull yourself together, bitch. It could be worse. You could be living in ancient Greece when women had to turn into laurel trees to avoid getting raped by Apollo. And even then, it was no guarantee. Even if you weren't a woman, I say again to myself, this time in a mirror, just look at poor Prometheus oozing from the gut for an eternity on a cliffside, proving that if you could get punished for gifting the world fire, you should worry about breathing too loudly through the nose while eating a sandwich. If the Greeks dipped their toes into blood, the Romans were the true harbingers of hurt, leaving a trail of perverted emperors and murder through the dark ages up until today. It has never really been a good time for us humans, has it? Which is why I've lied to every man I've ever loved, told them I come from better stock than this redneck biological grandpa who beat the hell out of his wife and shot her lover in the chest. Pretend that when the beginning of time happened, the firstborn wasn't a man and he didn't nurse so hard he tore the breast from his mother's bone, because that's what the myth would say, that we still have her blood in our mouth. This next poem is called Still Life of Repo Without a Tow Truck. And I took some creative liberties with this story. A couple times growing up, we did a repo, all 5 of us kids in the car. My mom's nodding her head. This is great. And my dad didn't have a repo truck. We would all load into this like 12, 15 passenger van and show up in front of some poor person's house. And my dad would, rip the garage open, get the car and go, everyone. So this is a poem about that. Every once in a while, my father would put down his wrench and begin his repo ritual. Puff out his chest, smooth his mustache, open the top drawer of his desk and touch the handle of his gun. He'd send for all 5 of us to come along. My mother bristled in the front seat of the van as she dropped him off in front of a garage. He'd have to pull open anything on the other side. It's dangerous, but less so with cute kids. So we'd peer out of the smudged tinted glass with our big brown eyes as some ran from their houses to threaten or curse us. We couldn't hear over the sound of idling van, but occasionally we saw through the windows of those houses a child our age, equally prisoner, staring back, neither one of us daring to look away. Okay, so some of the poems in this book are about football, which seems like an unlikely pairing of poems, but you know, a book that's called American Bitch, you have to think about all of the bitches of society, and athletes are treated very poorly. You know, they're pawns of people who make millions and millions of dollars off of them. So this is a poem about football, but it's a very specific poem about a moment in time during a football game. Some of you might remember this if you even like football. Otherwise, this might be a missed. This might be a miss. But in 1972, there was this thing called immaculate reception, where at the very end of a football game, you just throw the ball as hard as you can and you hope someone catches it. Like it's a last ditch effort to win a game. And you pretty much have to be close to tied for this to happen. But you just throw the ball and hope someone catches it. And in this moment in 1972, it happened. Someone threw the ball as far as they could across the field and someone made a touchdown. And it was this huge moment of men crying. And as we know, it's very, you know, it's not common for men to be open with their emotions. So here's a poem about that. Immaculate Reception. Hail Mary. I'm sorry, it's called a Hail Mary when you throw the football across the field, hoping someone catches it. Hail Mary, baptize me in Budweiser, or the tears of a man who doesn't cry at births or funerals, but is weeping now as he remembers 1972. Raiders, Steelers, 5 seconds to go. When the Steelers ball, carried by chance, ping-pongs its way into Franco Harris's hands. How holy it is to witness that brief tenderness. The crowd pouring over their seats like water. Fuqua being carried out to sea. Even to this day, no angle broken down frame by frame can solve the mystery that propels the tale of one man's miracle and another man's loss. How afraid some men are of their own water. I'm going to read you the last poem in my chapbook and a poem in my next book. It's one of my favorites. Dear Daughter, Tattoos. Because I want to give the mortician something to laugh at. Because we're so serious all the time. Because there was nothing better to do. Because my friend had a needle and a bottle of India ink. Because the body is not final. Because my mother told me no. Because there are some things you don't want to let go of. Because the only way to remember a mantra is to put it on a rib or thigh. Because I had money I didn't need. Because I had bare skin I didn't like. Because all my friends were doing it and are still doing it and will never stop doing it. Because my ancestors were tagged against their will. Because if there's anything I can take back, it's not history. Because if there's anything I can change, it's myself. Because if there is anything I can celebrate, I will. I'm going to shift a little bit to a manuscript that I'm trying to place now. This is not from an upcoming book. This is a book I wrote entirely about my dad dying of cancer in 6 months after he passed. It was like word vomit out. And the poem I'm going to read is going to be in an issue of New York Quarterly, which is all about faith. And this is a poem that mentions the mourner's Kaddish. So in Judaism, when someone passes, everyone says this thing called the mourner's Kaddish, and it's recognizing the person who's passed. Like saying that prayer is a way of recognizing and honoring them. This poem is called How to Prepare My Daughter for Grief. One cannot say the Kaddish without a minyan. A minyan is 10 or more people, which is to suggest that grief doesn't exist without the right number of people to sing it a body. Fuck that. The Kaddish actually cannot be made without memory. Just like without love, there can be no grief. A memory cannot be made without birds. For my entire childhood, I watched the maples fill out their branches in the spring with leaves, cardinals, owls, red-tailed hawks, turkey vultures, and hollow back in the fall and winter. You cannot have the trees without the moon, which also cycles from fullness to silence and back again, which is to say, before all things, there was light and darkness. I don't like that either. Within all things, there is end and beginning. What we learn from the old book is untruths we have built our world around. I build my daughter a swing set until my hands are bloody and call it worship. My father, who art in an urn, would be proud. We look at the trees to know what time of day it is, when it will storm. We eat what they give us and practice skinning our knees. This is one last poem from that manuscript, and then I'm going to read a poem about a shipwreck. This is called Addressing the Council of My Father's Body, and I'm going to give you just like a little bit of a spiel beforehand, because poetry is harder when you have to listen to it. And the idea behind this poem is I am addressing this council of people that are responsible for the health of my father's body. So I'm imagining this council of people and what they look like, and I am appealing to them. Council. I have been walking around my father's fruit farm all day under the proselytizing sun, thinking of what to say to you. I counted the pomegranate trees. There are 16, and on those, only 3 round fruit left, hideously lesioned and sick. And yet when I opened them, they were ripe and begging to be pulled apart. So I ate them and thought about how the cells on my father's esophagus multiply and crystallize like a stalagmite. Council, you have disappointed us. For 62 years, you have held one hand over your eyes and waved the other over my father's throat with great power you were not appointed to exercise. I implore you, watch his head like a water-worn creekstone being carried upstream, there through the window when he is able to make it to the toilet to empty. Council, you have robbed us of time, cost him liters of blood and shit. You have taken from us talks over sinks, beer bottles, middle consoles, have ripped up carpets and tent floors, sod and fresh compost. He lays around on pillows, propped up on his side to vomit into a box lined with the Harris Teeter bag, his port open like a straw for the life to climb out. Council, you owe us an apology, an explanation. Can you hear me? The pomegranates are lonely. It is night. My father wakes every hour in unfathomable pain to peer at them from his bed. He just wants to know who will care for them, who will gather their roots up in cupped hands, kiss, water, and twist them free. Okay, so this shipwreck was discovered recently, the Shackleton ship, and I could be getting the date wrong, but it was like early 1900s. This ship, the photos of the shipwreck are stunning. What I'm going to read is a shipwreck poem from the 1845 Franklin's Lost Expedition. And there is a really good, I mixed this up on Twitter when I tweeted this, but there's a really good documentary on this expedition. And bunch of people from England go to explore Antarctica. And of course, because it's Antarctica, their ship does not make it very far and they end up shipwrecked and survive an incredibly long time. Trigger warning, this poem does have cannibalism and I make a little joke of it, but obviously it's very serious if you are dying out in the wilderness. This is also an old Ray poem. So you all are hearing like poems that span a decade. And I find that, I'm curious what you think about it. How History is Made, Franklin's 1845 Lost Expedition. It wasn't Captain Franklin dying or the following year the crew spent icebound. It wasn't the dwindling survivor count or watching the last few men hanging bones walk 1,000 miles towing a small rescue boat. Not the scurvy, not the relentless cough, not the tungsten sky. It wasn't that the crew walked towards cannibalism and not refuge. None of that is what got me. What I couldn't shake was how accurately one of the small-time actors, this is the documentary, just a heads up, performed gnawing at his compatriot's hip bone with eyes so vacuous they could implode a distant star. I wanted to know what dark place that actor learned to visit so effortlessly to convince me that I too can feel the desperation of having to rank the closest people I know in order of whose hams I boil first. As if I wouldn't have had the common sense to decline setting sail through an incorrigibly cold and secluded place. And wouldn't anyone with a healthy teaspoon of doubt have done the same? No, I tell you what Nova already knows. Humans are terrible planners and interminable dreamers. If there's a sliver of a chance of being remembered, there's a whole buffet of a chance worth sacrificing the future grandkids for. After all, the only unbearable part of cannibalizing your closest friends is if you have to live with it long after, and lucky for Franklin's crew, they did not. Imagine those few agonizing hours you've bought yourself, the snow 30 feet high, your family in England having long stopped the search party and beginning to laugh again, the 1,000 miles you walked with a boat on your back, and the 1,000 you have to go and still you cannot let go. You haunt the white grounds with your littered bones, picked clean of flesh, and scare the natives for not giving you more than an ounce of rotten whale meat. At night, you make the wind scream and scream until 100 years pass when finally your remains in the boat are found by another crew of dreamers. The men who find you have tears in their eyes because you did it, or something else did it, because you could not. However it happened, the Northwest Passage completed, and it all seemed silly now because history made itself. Okay, well, that was a little awkward to make as the last poem with cannibalism in it. So we're gonna pick another one to end it on. Okay, I'm gonna end it on Wolves Change Rivers, and it's one of my favorite poems. It's dedicated to my husband who would really like to be here, but he's wrestling a 3-year-old to sleep. And I don't know if you all saw this, but there was a documentary about how in Yellow Springs, I clearly really like documentaries. In Yellowstone, wolves were introduced back to the ecosystem and it started to repair. So wolves are like very important to a variety of ecosystems in order for them to heal, basically. This is based off of that concept of other things healing ecosystems, even within ourselves. Sometimes I read a line from a dead poet and think, wow, we must have lived our lives in a particularly desperate way to arrive at the same echoed line. Sometimes I scoff, how unoriginal we are in loneliness and in love. Will we ever change? If I could do anything at this very moment, it would be to walk all 720 miles to see your face exactly as it is, through the window when you're unaware of my presence. Would the corners of your mouth mimic the smile of a dead actor, a river, a vein? I'll never know, like you'll never know what's really going on in the Middle East. I want to hold your heart like a plum pit I extracted from the windpipe of a man, all spit covered, unstrained, and round like the earth. I want to hold you like a brass trumpet, like a tree branch, like a dead bird I'm offering to the sun and the rain. Like I am important and you are beautiful. Those seem like original gestures, but I know they are not. I can't live by poetry alone. I can't live by my own two hands. Can't live alone on the fruit the pit bears. It seems silly, but then it does not. I used to be something else, a sad, lost beetle, and then I was not. How do you explain that? Love. Wolves change rivers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you. Awesome. I see you got a couple of comments also in the chat. Does anybody have any feedback for Ray? All right. Well, Ray, how can they connect with you on social media?
Sure. I will put in the chat my website, and I can put my Twitter handle and all those fancy things, and people can click on that if they'd like, or follow me, and I will follow
Okay.
you right back.
All right. And Karen, do you have social media information? If you do, you can put it in the chat as well.
Like speaking another language, typing these things, and IG symbol.
That's very true. If you don't put those in there, you might end up somewhere else.
Yep. Don't want that.
So I've put LLA's contact information in the chat a couple of times. So also, if you want to be on our mailing list, you can go to this link and join our mailing list. You'll get our monthly newsletter and our upcoming events, all of that great stuff. I just want to thank you all so much, Karen and Ray, for sharing with us a lot of transparent writing. But we want to continue to encourage everyone to log in every month on InKY and just listen to all of the writers who are going to be on there and read. And just, we kind of want to continue to grow our network and connect. I know a lot of writers have competitions, so we want to make sure that you all are connected in that way. A lot of them do anthologies, so they're seeking other writers. So it'd be great if you join our mailing list. And then we look forward to anyone who wants to join as a member, and also to connect to our big event called the Writer's Block. We have not done it in 3 years. So we are super, super excited. And we're actually going to host it over the bridge in Indiana. Everything is brand new for LLA right now. We are rebranding the organization. I just want to encourage everybody, join the mailing list. Follow us on social media at Louisville Literary Arts, almost everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And again, I'm Charlize Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of Louisville Literary Arts. And I just want to thank everyone again for coming out tonight. Thank you so much, Ray and Karen.